So this is the first of our hopefully lots of episodes together.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be something that just feels really flowy and good. So we'll see where it goes. I'm open.
All right, me too. Me too. I actually, it's funny that you mentioned today was like this black moon,
Yeah.
because I felt compelled to go do some Christmas shopping for Small Business Saturday at my favorite like crystal store.
Hmm.
And I felt called with a sign to get this little crystal.
Oh my gosh, is it black? I can't see it very
It's
well.
like black and red.
Ooh, I love that. Well, that's really interesting because not only is it a black moon, not only is it a new moon, but it's a new moon in Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is like a fiery energy. So the red and the black together are kind of like a nice balance.
I love it. Well, when I looked up what this was, it's cinnabar and it's supposed to be for like alchemy and magic and transformation. So
That's so cool. I love that.
on
That's
point.
kind of perfect for a new moon because the new moon is all about like planting the seeds of your dreams and figuring out like what manifestations you are hoping to draw in. So I think that's a perfect crystal for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also it's to face truth courageously, which I thought was pretty awesome. So we're facing this truth that we should have started doing stuff like this a long time ago.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking our truth and just living in that, authenticity and I don't know, it feels right.
Yeah. So we were going to talk today about synchronicities.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I've been seeing 555 everywhere lately. So it was funny when you mentioned that to me the other day. It
Yeah.
was so serendipitous or synchronous.
Yeah. Maybe we should talk about that. So the other day I texted Kelly because Kelly is my cosmic bestie. She's somebody who kind of understands this like woo side of me, and she's just completely in the same frequency. Like we're kind of on that zone together. And I was driving and I saw this van that was for sale, and I think it was the number that you could call, and it was 555. And so of course I took a picture because I was like, angel number, like 555. But what was really weird is that the next day in a completely different area of town, I was driving and I saw the same angel number van with the 555. So that's when I was like, I have to tell Kelly. And then, I mean, you can kind of share what happened to you then, because you also were receiving these kind of signs in numeric form.
Yeah, so I tend to log my food in different apps. So that number was showing up there as like the calorie count. It was showing up all over the place in random locations. It popped up on the dashboard for the time when I happened to look down at the moment. And so I've seen a lot of number sequences over time, but right now 555 is the one I'm seeing the most. And I think we were like, okay, what does this actually mean? So when we looked it up, it was all about transformation and growth, and it
Yeah,
felt very fitting.
I think so too. I think that like we've spent a lot of years just kind of figuring out, I guess not figuring out, but undoing all of the aspects of ourselves that we thought we were. And so it kind of is like a transformational time for us, but more so in like stepping into our truth. Like I feel like that's really what we're doing. It's not so much that we're transforming, we're almost like having this homecoming to who we've always been that we've just kind of kept hidden.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's I think because, like society doesn't make it easy
Yeah.
for us to talk about these sorts of things. I know that growing up, like, I don't know, I know we were both raised in kind of religious families by background, and then we actually went to college together at a Catholic university. And so,
Yeah.
like, there's that element, right? There's the religious component where we're brought up with this belief system that like thinking things other than what we're taught is going to be wrong or will have some sort of negative impact on us. And then
Yeah.
there's also this piece that like I grew up kind of being a student of science. And so science was also like, okay, well, if you can test it and experiment and get a result, then it must be true. But there's so many elements, I think, that we don't know. And so I would argue that, spirituality and all these signs, it is science, and we just don't know enough about it.
And I think that it is testable, if that is even a word. I
Yeah.
think that's like, for instance, I think there are different ways that you can um receive signs, and one of them is calling them in. And actually, like before we got started, I like kind of sat in meditative just reflection, and I called upon my angels and my guides, and I asked them, I was like, I just want to know that you're here, that you're guiding us, that you're supporting us, and please show me, like I kept seeing like number four. I was like, I want to see a sign in the form of the number four before this podcast ends. So I got out um my tarot deck, and as I'm shuffling, the card that fell out was the Four of Pentacles.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it.
Before before we even started our podcast, like that, like a sign was received. So I feel like that's almost testing the universe too. And I think it's totally fine to be like, hey, like I'm going through this right now. I really could use this sign knowing that I'm on the right path. Please show me something before I go to bed at night, and then be specific with that sign.
Mhm.
Um, and then when you see it, that's like an answered prayer, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's a great example of like asking for signs, but then I also think the universe sends us signs that we need to pay attention to, and sometimes we don't, and then they get more frequent with the signs. For
Yeah.
example, I often get signs from birds, and so lately I've
You
had
see
all kinds of,
cardinal.
yep, so there's a cardinal that comes as a sign. There's an owl that tends to come in pretty frequently. In fact, wakes me up at about 3 a.m. every single morning,
Yeah.
for the last like 2 weeks. But I test the universe, like you said. I'm like, okay, well, this is just coincidence. Like there are
Yeah.
all these birds. And I was like, send me like something that I wouldn't expect. And as we were driving along, this was maybe like 2 weeks ago. We're driving along the road and we realize we made a wrong turn. So we have to do a U-turn. So we pull up to do a U-turn, and sitting on the side of the road, just staring up at us, is a hawk.
Oh, see?
And so the universe is like, okay, fine. You want to
Yeah.
play that game? I'll
Yeah.
send something. So the hawk stood there and just like stared at us for a little bit. And then after probably maybe like a minute and a half, got up and just flew very slowly away. It was beautiful. But
I feel like that's totally a sign. And I think the difference between like when people get so caught up in like, well, like, is it a sign or is it just like coincidence? I think the difference is hidden in like the intention and also the meaning behind it.
mhm.
So I think a lot of times, like, there are four different ways I view like signs or synchronicities. And I think one is a way of like connection. So if you have been, thinking about someone or missing like a grandparent, for instance, and then all of a sudden, like let's say you're missing your grandma, and um, she used to always wear the signature perfume, and that was kind of like you associated your grandma with this perfume, and you're really missing her, and you turn on the TV, and there's all of a sudden an ad for this perfume. To me, that's a sign because like you're in the moment thinking about that person. I think there are signs that are almost like signposts. So if you're going through like a really kind of difficult time or a transition, and you just don't know where to turn, and you're kind of really feeling into those feelings and those emotions, like our emotions are like little frequencies that we're emitting out into the universe. And I
Mhm.
receive a sign during that time, then that, I mean, that's different than it just being a coincidence, because like your intention is behind it.
Yeah.
Sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I also, well, I know I believe this, but for folks who don't know this, I believe that like we essentially come to Earth, and Earth is this playground, right? And so we design every lesson we want to learn, and obviously there's free will in it and we can make choices throughout, but there's this idea or this knowing I have that we actually give ourselves certain also like distinct signs, as kind of like what you said, as guideposts to let you know that you're on the right path. And I don't always see them in the moment or like give them the weight or gravity that I should in the moment. But reflecting back, it's always super clear.
Yeah.
And I think about just kind of every decision I've made. And when I look back, there were definitely signs along the way that made me
Mhm.
know that that was the right thing to do. And while I didn't recognize it on like a conscious level, I
Mhm.
my soul must have recognized it to make the decision I made.
Absolutely. And they always say like, hindsight is 20/20, but it could be, like that you not recognizing those signs when you're going through them in that moment could even be a sign in itself that,
Yeah.
there maybe were more lessons that your soul had planned for you to go through before you could even recognize that like you were on this path going towards, whatever it was you were going towards. So sometimes like I think that like the absence of the signs, even though like they're there, like, peppered along your path can be a sign in itself.
Yeah.
You
That's
just have maybe some more growing that you needed to do.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And then,
Yeah.
there's this whole, well, I think, your partner is the same as mine, quite the skeptic when it comes to this sort of thing. And when I point out like all of my repeating numbers that I tend to see on a frequent basis, the husband is like, well, logically, the statistical probability of blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, and
Yeah.
tries to debunk it in that way. But there's I think this element to what we create with our minds. Yes. And I actually still think that's a sign. So if we're all vibration, we're all
Yeah.
made of energy, and you and I are both vibrating on the same wavelength,
Yeah.
then we're probably going to see the same similar signs, right? Because we're on that same wavelength. And
Mhm.
so his argument the other day was, well, I'm seeing these numbers because I'm now looking for them. But I would take it a step further and say they're appearing because I'm looking for them and because I continue to sort of operate at that level of frequency or vibration.
Yeah.
So that goes back purely to science, right? Quantum physics tells us that due to entanglement and all of this crazy stuff, like
Yeah.
our thoughts create reality.
Yeah. Nothing can be created or destroyed. But I also keep wanting to go back to if you're seeing repeated signs, it's not necessarily that you're like creating that, which I think you definitely could because especially our thoughts, are so they're energetic, they're energy. You're sending out
Mhm.
that frequency that you were talking about. But I also just think that like if the intention is behind it, like what were you doing in those moments when you saw it? Like were you wondering, um, were you asking like a bigger question or were you thinking about something? And then that, like to me, there's like a connection piece to it, to the sign
Yeah.
that is different than just the coincidence. And I'm not sure if I'm like explaining that right. Sometimes I feel like,
Makes
like my
sense to me.
words like doesn't like, match up with whatever's like going on in my mind. But I don't know. I just think that like there's like layers to it. And, you can be seeing 111 all the time. But if there's not that added layer where there's like the connection that you're making with it,
Yeah.
then that's the difference between something that's a sign and something that's just like purely coincidental or something that you're even creating just because you're, putting a lot of thought towards it.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, what I've started to do to get to that next layer is kind of try to be aware of what is going on. So a lot of how like my guides or my loved ones communicate with me is through actually sound. So like music or words that like
Yeah.
strangers could even speak. So oftentimes when I see like 11:11 on the radio or on my watch or something, I'm trying to pay attention to what am I hearing. And oftentimes it's like song lyrics that are giving me validation or reassurance or answering a question that I've been asking.
Mhm. That's exactly what thank you. You explained it way better. This is why like I'm never in charge of explaining like directions for games because I just can't like make that connection. But yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like the intention behind it or like what you were doing in the moment, what you were thinking about in the moment matters. And
Mhm.
that's the difference between something that is like synchronicity, whatever. That is like a sign from the universe versus just something that is like purely coincidental.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always tell your partner, like, I mean, I don't know how he would explain this. I would be so curious to like sit and listen, but like my entire life, like my sign has always been hearts. Like I see him,
Mm-hmm.
whenever I am confused about something or going through something, when I'm making big decisions. And sometimes I just see them like randomly, but it's always been consistent throughout my life. I went to a psychic once and she was like, your grandma is trying to connect with you, and she's showing me that there's something sewn into the bodice of her wedding dress. And it's really important that you look because it's going to be meaningful to you. And so I told my mom. My mom was like, I don't know. Like, I wore her wedding dress and I don't remember seeing anything like sewn into like the bodice part, but let's get it out and look. And we got it out. And as I was like wanting to try it on and pulling it up, we could see that there was like something sewn in right here. And so my mom pulled back the fabric and it was a heart.
You just gave me goosebumps.
I mean, I know because like how do you explain that? Like there's no she
Yeah.
didn't know that it was there. Like I obviously didn't know it was there. That psychic like didn't even know. I mean, she didn't know me at all. And yet throughout my entire life I received these signs that were in the form of hearts only to be guided towards this heart that was sewn into my grandmother's wedding dress by her. Like I mean, there's no
Yeah.
explain that.
Yeah, that's awesome. It reminds me a lot of like the little nudges that that people will get. Like the other day we were watching, what is that show with the guy who's a medium, Tyler Henry?
Oh, yeah.
And he was doing a reading for some folks, and it was like there was a similar thing that popped up. Like there was something that was so personal and so detailed
Yeah.
that he was able to bring up and didn't mean anything to him as like the medium, but
Yeah.
individual knew exactly what it was. And it's because that was like this connection. And like it's not something you can go Google or research on someone, right?
You can't, I mean, it's, yeah, it's unexplainable and you can't, I guess that is something you can't really test in science, but how else do you explain that it happens?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't it be, maybe we should like think of a sign and like infuse it into like this podcast and be like, if you watch this, then
Hmm.
you're going to see like either a color or a symbol. I mean, we could say 555 since we've been seeing that, or it could be maybe, I don't know why I keep seeing like the color, like, I see like a golden yellow, and it could be because I know like yellow is your favorite color, but, um, I don't know. I think we should like infuse a sign with like intention that if you watch this and then you notice the sign, take it as just like maybe your ancestors or your guides saying hello.
Yeah, I love that. So let's do 555, but then adding on to your golden, like I was seeing a butterfly because 555 is about transformation and like
Ooh, yeah.
butterflies for me
Love that. Mhm.
illustrate that. So maybe it's a golden butterfly. So 555 or a golden butterfly.
And let's say you see them together or like one right after the other, and that will be your sign. That's how you
Yeah.
know it's a difference.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to infuse that in. I like it.
love it. Okay. Um, what about your kids? Do they see signs?
I don't think so, not so much. Like my oldest, when he was little, used to say he would see angels and he would see them like sitting on houses, or we'd be like having dinner and they'd be like joining us for dinner. But as far as signs, like they never really bring them up to me. But I have all boys, and sometimes I think it's like not to be like stereotyped,
Yeah.
but they're very, very much on the spectrum of like all boy. A little bit more like logical and reasonable and masculine and less like feminine and flowy. But I don't know. I think your kids definitely like are more tuned in to kind of like the spiritual side of life.
They definitely are. Most interestingly, not a sign the other day, but I'm sitting next to Kaya's bed. So my daughter is 9, for those of you who
Mhm.
haven't met her. And I'm getting ready to tuck her in, and she goes, Mom, what if I see something dark, like a dark silhouette? And I said, Oh, well, that's just, that's energy. That's someone we can't see in our realm, right? That's
Mhm.
in a different realm. So that could be a past loved one. It could be an angel. She's like, it's an angel. No, wait. I think it's your grandpa.
Oh
She's
my
like, he's
gosh.
stepping forward. He's got a green shirt on and gray hair, and he's standing next to you. He just touched your shoulder and smiled. And
Did
I
you
asked,
feel him? Did
what?
you feel like any like goosebumps or anything like on that side?
I mean, I was already feeling cold. Like I had started to feel cold a little bit earlier, so that's
Yeah.
usually a sign for me, but I felt really like warm and happy and in alignment. And so um yeah, I was not expecting that to come out of her mouth, but so I have three grandpas because I have step grandpas.
Mhm.
Three of my grandpas have passed, so I was like, well, what color eyes does he have? Because they all had different color eyes, so I'd know who it was. And she's like, it's the one with the blue eyes. And so that was my grandpa Bill. And so
Oh,
I had no idea why he was there visiting me, but she is able to see things. She also knows that she should never feel scared when she sees 444 because her angels are with her
mhm.
and she sees 444 often when she
Yeah.
needs to. So
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I wonder, like, was yesterday significant in it being either like a grandfather's birthday or a passing, like
not
an
his
anniversary?
birthday. I think he was a July baby, just kind of like she was, but I can't remember when he passed, so I'd have to look it up.
Yeah. I'm just interested if like there's a like an anniversary or connection there.
Yeah.
Um, if that's the reason why he came. I mean, I could try and channel him and see, but I don't know. I think she's definitely like probably clairvoyant and claircognizant.
Yeah.
It sounds like, yeah. Which
Yeah.
is
I think it scares her a lot. Like her signs are not always like she's not certain what to do and she doesn't know if they're good or bad necessarily.
So that used to happen to me. Like I grew up seeing, like spirits and experiencing things like that. And it took me a while to figure out how to turn it off. But you can just tell her to like kind of close her crown and just to like, even if it's just like through visualization or using her imagination, just to imagine it closing. And then she can ask her guardian, whoever she feels is her guardian, um, and just ask them, please turn off the flow of that kind of connection. Turn off that channel and just
Okay.
let me sleep, or turn off that channel and just let me be a kid today. Like I don't want to be, seeing or talking to spirits.
Yeah.
Just allow me to be a kid, and but like specifically asking her guardian and then visualizing like her crown closing. I think I don't know, that's what I do. And that it
Yeah.
helps me to like kind of balance it a little bit more.
I'll have to tell her about that. I think she'll like doing that. I know she's a huge empath and like she's noticed that when she's around a ton of people, she picks up like emotion and starts to feel that and her
Yeah.
behavior will change pretty significantly. So she
Yeah.
learned how to like call her power back and set some boundaries, which has been good. So I'll have to teach her your thing too.
Yeah, I don't know. Won't hurt. Maybe it'll help.
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's interesting to think about. I think your kids are definitely very sensitive. I think mine were a lot when they were younger, but now that mine are a little bit older than yours, and it's kind of sad. Like I think that this is another big thing that I think that we could talk about is intuition, just in general.
Yeah.
Like you and I are not like special. Like everybody has this intuition inside of them and this ability to tap into it. But I think what happens is that like, when puberty hits or the more, stories you are like, being imprinted on from like the world, you kind of lose the ability to open yourself up to kind of those other realms and those other frequencies.
Hmm.
And I think that's why you see kids, being able to talk to angels or saying, like, I remember, where I was before I was born. It's because they're still tapped in. They're not, everything is still pure and open. They're not so closed off yet.
Yeah, I think you're totally spot on. I think that anyone can open themselves up to those like I kind of like think of it as how to describe this? Like if you had like Wi-Fi going on, right? There's like a receiver that receives the message and it's kind of like there's something that has gotten in the way
Hmm.
because of how we've been brought up or programmed or our
Yeah.
experiences. But just like you could, clear the blockage to make sure that your Wi-Fi starts working again, like we can do that too. And I think the first step is actually the really hard part for people, and that's being like present in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not present in the moment, you're gonna miss all kinds of stuff. Like it could be right there in front of your face and you still miss it. 'Cause you're just
Yeah. I agree. It's almost, and that is difficult for people, especially because we're so programmed to be busy and to never just like sit in stillness. But you're absolutely right. I think like quieting the ego and the brain and just really sitting with your soul, and you kind of, it's almost like training yourself to quiet all of the outside noise
Mhm.
and just open yourself up to receiving whatever messages are meant for you. And it's you really have to let go of control, and that's hard for some people.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. It's also like trusting what you receive. So I
Mhm.
remember hearing from a lot of friends, kind of like you and other people, that like you might see things. And I'm not clairvoyant in that, like I see these
You're
pictures.
clairaudient and claircognizant, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, so clairaudient, claircognizant, and clairsentient. But
Mhm.
sometimes I just know things and I don't know how I know them. And it sounds absurd. But when I stop thinking and just start being and like letting things flow, stuff
Yeah.
flows. I can think of an example of this. So I was at a wedding for a dear friend several years ago, and we were sitting on a table with a bunch of people we didn't really know. So we had just met them that night. And I just had this like gut feeling that I should tell this girl sitting across from me that there was somebody with her and that he just wanted to say like everything is okay and you're loved and whatever. And I was like, I don't know why I have this feeling. And I told my husband this and he's like, that sounds weird. Don't say anything. But I had a couple drinks and then I was like, I'm gonna go use the bathroom. Anyone else have to go? And she happened to get up with me and we walked to the bathroom and I said, this is gonna sound really crazy, but I just have this urge to tell you that there's like this guy here that you can't see, and he says not to worry about things, everything's good, and you're loved. And she burst into tears
Oh,
and said that it was a loved one of hers that passed on. I won't give more detail than that because I didn't,
personal.
yeah, it's personal. And I didn't clear sharing the story ahead of time, but um it sounded absurd to me coming out of my mouth. And I was like, this sounds like I'm just making something up. But it
Uh,
meant something to her. And it wasn't like I saw something or heard something. It was just like this like piece of knowledge in my body that felt like it needed to come out.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think maybe that's also like example of being at the right place at the right time. Like maybe you were meant to be there so that you could give her this message that would then kind of facilitate this like little, like the little, I don't know, ignite like healing in her. Maybe she needed that. Maybe she was going through a hard time and didn't even realize that she was still holding on to that grief. And by you
Yeah.
being, this person, although physically is not here anymore, spiritually, energetically, like they're still able to connect with you because, like, especially because you didn't know her. Like, how were you to even know that she had a loved one who passed and that she was maybe going through a hard time?
Yeah. Yeah. And like for those of you who might be experiencing this like on your own, like just
Mhm.
what I tell you is like trust it. Like I
Yeah.
kind of wrote it off and was like, okay, that was just a weird one-off experience. But I have a
Yeah.
feeling there were other opportunities I had that I kind of just like brushed aside because I didn't trust it or I was like thinking people would think I was crazy.
Yeah. I think you're really like in the frequency of becoming right now too, because I think that like you've learned to trust it and like you kind of accepted the fact that this is a part of you. I think you've always been very spiritual and like psychic and intuitive. But there was a part of you, maybe because you're more like on the science, brainwave side, like a part of you that maybe didn't want to fully even think about it, like just kind of like set it aside. Whereas now it's like you've kind of pulled that blanket off and you're really embracing it. And like that's like you living in your truth.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. And I think part of that for me was like helping my kids, right? Like if they're gonna have some of these situations pop
Yeah.
up, like I was getting signs that like I need to help them a little bit more. So
Yeah. Well, I believe that like before we're born, like our children and us, like both of our souls choose each other for
yeah.
specific reasons, for specific lessons that you need to learn. And so maybe in a past life, your kids or you were almost like persecuted for your abilities or um for like speaking your truth. And so you've been brought together back in this lifetime. Maybe that's like a lesson you need to move through is learning how to um, feel safe sharing your gifts and feel safe sharing your voice.
Yeah, yeah. Spot on. Definitely have been I had this sort of inner knowing about some of my past lives, and some stuff was validated recently for me with some different readings I had with a medium and then an Akashic Records reader. And yeah, I think you're right. And it's interesting, like those are signs too, like when you experience something and you're like, you have that little voice inside you that says you still have to overcome it. Like I do
Yeah.
think like if it doesn't relate to something in this current life, it relates to lessons that we've had to learn in other lives. But yeah, going back to like those readers, they validated I had had multiple lives where um I
You're
was persecuted.
persecuted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it. I think I definitely have too. My North Node is in Gemini, which is interesting because it's all about like Gemini's like communication and learning to like speak your truth. And I almost wonder sometimes if because in a past life I wasn't able to do that, if that's why like my soul chose to be born at this specific time in this specific place, so that my North Node would kind of force me to like be propelled forward. Because I kind of am somebody who's just like to kind of like, flow through life a little bit and maybe like
Yes.
a little bit more direction. So like that
Yeah.
kind of like gravitational pull that we get through our North nodes. I don't know. I feel like that was significant for me too. I definitely feel like I was persecuted for that in a past life as well.
Yeah. Well, I
We're
think
probably together.
probably. I do think there's something about the collective right now with like this rising of the divine feminine. I think there are a lot of folks who are choosing to reincarnate right now who have had that, happen to them in one life or many other lives. And that the strength that they will bring to help raise consciousness, I think, is like gonna be out of this world.
Do you mean like the children that are being born like right now in this generation?
Yeah, I mean, well, not just this generation, but I think like our generation, our kids' generation, and then the folks who are being born now, I think you're going to see this like rise in people who are ready to speak their truth and are
Yeah.
not like buying into the status quo or keeping up with the Joneses or, they're just, I
Yeah.
guess I'd say like more authenticity across the
Mhm.
board.
They're breaking open the geode. Like I kind of feel like our
Yeah.
generation was one where it was almost like we're the cycle breakers. Like a lot of us came here to break those like generational cycles.
Yeah.
And I think like the newer generation, like maybe from like for some reason I want to say 2012, and on, is they're here to almost like I feel like our like it was a little bit harder for us because we're breaking those cycles and we're learning all those kind of karmic lessons.
Yeah.
And they're coming even to like make the visions that we have become reality.
Yeah,
Uh,
I love that.
yeah, and like I kind of see us as being like if you think about like the geode where there's like this hard outer shell and you have to kind of like keep chipping at it. Like you're
Yeah.
going lesson by lesson in order to get to like that crystal that's in the center. And I feel like a lot of us like, we're breaking out of that shell now,
Yeah.
um, shaking things up a little bit.
Yeah. What do you feel like was the most powerful sign that you've received?
Ooh, I mean, I'd have to really think about that. I mean, I think that one with my grandma is pretty powerful, just because I've always felt so connected to her. But
Yeah.
I've received lots of signs. The number things, I receive those all the time. I don't know, I'm gonna have to think about that. What about you?
Yeah, I think like it's a difficult question. I've thought about it, but like For me, it's not any one sign that kind of
Chin.
stands out. It's more like now looking back and I look at every decision that I was really happy about in my life. Like there were signposts, like you said, along the way.
Yeah.
And it's fun to
Yeah.
actually like take the time to sit and reflect and go, oh my gosh, yeah, like there were the signs there. And so to me, this is gonna sound kind of meta, but sitting here looking back at all the signs is a sign that I'm still on the right path.
Absolutely. I think so too. Um, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's so many like hearts are a big thing for me. Like a few months ago we went on a road trip and I bought like these like peanut M&Ms and I pulled out, the first one and it was two M&Ms that had like kind of, I guess, been together and they made literally a perfect heart. Another one, a lot of my signs I think are connected to my grandma because I never met her, but I always felt so connected to her. She's the one who would visit me in my childhood room. I'm named after her. I've just always felt a connection. I would astro travel with her when I was little. But one of the things that was really cool is, we both went to SLU and I struggled a lot, I think, because I moved around and I never really felt like I had roots anywhere. And so I kind of was questioning like where I was going to go after school. And my mom found my grandmother's journal
Mhm.
and in it, she wrote about where she spent her first night as like a married woman. And it was at Coronado.
What?
Yeah, which was it because back then it was like this like nice hotel. And like for those who don't know SLU, Coronado is like an apartment building that is literally right across the street from the campus. So to me, that was like a very powerful sign of like, I got you. Like no matter what decision you make, no matter like where
Yeah.
you turn, just know that I'm gonna be with you. And that oof, I have like goosebumps and makes me like want to cry because I felt her presence so strongly. To me, that was like I needed to know that I wasn't alone. I needed to know that I was like, moving in not necessarily the right direction, but moving in a direction. And that to me was like confirmation.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I had no idea about the Coronado
Yeah,
story.
I am actually surprised I didn't tell you because I lived there one summer with like you were like right above me.
Yeah. Yeah, that building definitely had character and lots of energy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also what's interesting with like I think you've kind of touched on this a few times when you are going through life and you're receiving these signs, but you're not noticing them. Those signs aren't going to just stop and go away. And I almost feel like they get even stronger the more you like ignore them. And that's like a sign in itself as well.
Yes, yes. I can think back to a relationship I had a
Which
long
one?
time ago. What?
I said, which one?
Well, to protect people's identity, I'll just say it was one that probably should have ended sooner rather than later.
Okay, gotcha.
But
I know.
but speaking of like the song signs, like I would get REO Speedwagon Time for Me to Fly like happening
Oh my
multiple
God.
times a day, and I was not listening to it. And it was
Yeah.
like getting louder and louder and like cool, maybe it's popular right now and it just comes on the radio a lot. But then I think I had been out with like girlfriends,
Mhm.
at a bar and the song came on like two or three times in one night. And I was like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah, that's your sign. That was like your higher self, I feel like from a different timeline coming in and being like, Kelly, like you're not getting it.
Yes, yes, 1000%.
Yeah. And I think that that song, like, isn't that from the 80s? Like, I don't even think it was from the 2000s.
Yes, yes. It's not a song you would normally hear on the
Yeah.
radio. But even so,
So,
I didn't trust that. And I was like, oh, it's probably just popular on the radio right now.
yeah, no, it totally was probably not. See, ha, there you go. Your partner. I don't want to say his name, but how do you explain that? Like it's coming out multiple times a night and it's not popular. It's not even from like that era. Like that's
Right?
fine. Yeah. That's what we're saying is that like you need to really think about what you're doing and what you're thinking about or what you're feeling in that moment when this sign appears to you because that's going to be powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And going back to the thing I said earlier, that's just so important and I can't hammer home enough. It's like that whole being present. But when you're
Hmm.
constantly rushing through life, you're not going to be present. In a non like this conversation sort of way, I tell people that all the time when I'm coaching them that like they're missing out on like emotional information in a room of people if they're not present. But
Yeah,
beyond this goes well beyond that, right? So
yeah.
like this is information that if you're not actually in the moment,
Mhm.
you might not hear the song on the radio. You could just be totally buzzing along doing whatever. And that's where, oh, what were, remember the old time TVs and they had those really long antennas
Antennas.
ears?
Yeah.
It's like those people, when you're not fully present, like your bunny ears are down. And
Hmm.
then it's like when you start to practice that mindfulness, your bunny ears raise up a little bit more and then you're like getting a slightly better signal and whatnot. But then like when you can actually be fully present in the moment on most days, that's when your bunny ear antennas are like super tall and you'll be able to actually recognize things.
Yeah, I believe it. And that's like you like ascending, like with each lesson, like figuring out almost like that lesson in truth that you were talking about of really like learning to trust yourself. And I think that you can't really fully trust yourself if you don't ever sit with yourself and
Mm-hmm.
sit with yourself without distractions. Like just like sometimes I tell like my clients that when they're wanting to um find an answer and they're not receiving it, I'm like, go sit in a dark room just by yourself for 5 minutes. Just start with 5 minutes and see what starts to come through. And I guarantee what happens is once you start to kind of ground into your body,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you can like kind of open yourself up to receiving messages and knowing that it's not necessarily like at first it may be your ego, maybe your mind coming in, but eventually that's going to become quiet and just like working that trust muscle and learning to really trust yourself and trust your soul, that's going to allow you to, like we were talking about, kind of like ascend back up and have your little bunny ears be attuned.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I have a fun neuroscience tip for anyone who actually wants to like practice. So just like you go to the gym, you might like lift weights more frequently if you want to build your like physical muscles. You can
Hmm.
actually do the same thing with your brain. So if you want to be more in control of being able to clear out your brain, you can spend 2 to 5 minutes doing a rep of something. So I might, this little mini slinky that I have on my desk for fidgeting with, I might set a timer for 2 minutes and literally all I'm thinking about is how the slinky feels. And any thought that doesn't relate to how the slinky feels, I have to actively push out of my brain.
Mm.
And if you do that for 2 to 5 minutes, I call that one rep, right? Now, if you did that like 3 times a day, every day, that's
Yeah,
equivalent to you like working out, right? If you want to go and get really toned arms, you're gonna go to the gym more frequently and work out your muscles. Well, you can actually work out your brain for that now too.
that's so cool. I love that. I'm gonna try it.
Do it. And if
Yeah.
you don't like this works for me because I'm a really tactile person, but like if you don't want to do that, you can also like go sit outside and just concentrate on the farthest away sound that you could hear, or go stare at a piece of art and just think about how beautiful it is, and any other thought that doesn't relate to that, you have to push aside. It's really hard to do actually at first. I struggled,
It's
but
hard. Well, those thoughts, they're always like they're hard to turn off. I do that when I meditate. I will like imagine a triangle in front of me and I imagine it being like sticky and every thought that I have, like I just placed in that triangle and I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna get to you, but I gotta do this first. Sometimes for me, like the visualization helps, but maybe I would like that kind of, I don't know. I think I would be more tactile as well, like needing to feel and like focus in on that. I'm gonna try it.
And if you want to do something that's like less, I mean, playing with a slinky is not obtrusive, but if you want something even more unobtrusive, next time you're taking a shower, just concentrate on how the water feels on your skin.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it's like what you do, like what we learned like in school for psychology when you're going through like anxiety, you can go outside and what is it you like have to think of three things that you can hear or
Yeah.
five things that you
Grounding.
can see. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It switches your brain from like getting hijacked by your amygdala into like
Mhm.
your higher brain.
Yeah. We used to do that when like when I was a school counselor and our kids were freaking out, I would tell them to like look at the bottom of their shoe and then close their eyes and describe it to me, and just
Mm,
continuously thinking about like what it looks like and what it feels like. But you're right, yeah, it is kind of like training your brain to kind of block out those other stimuli.
yeah, for sure. So what sign have you been seeing most frequently lately besides 555, which
Besides 555, I see like numeric signs a lot, like 222. I see a lot. 111. I see 1 2 3 4 all the time. And of course, like my hearts. It's interesting because you mentioned the red cardinal. I knew you were going to say that because I've been seeing that for the past 3 days.
of course.
There is like, and I don't normally, birds for me are not normally a sign for me. It's just not. But I guess it was 3 days ago I went out and there was a feather like down by my foot where I was standing. And
Mhm.
then today, when I was just like with snowing here and I was out, I was looking at the snow falling through my window and I looked down and there was like this little cardinal just staring at
Oh,
me.
that's cute. Aw.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what about you?
So it's definitely numeric sequences, kind of like what you said. I tend to see 1111, 555, 444, 333. And those are at different times. So I've been able to decipher like 1111 is usually like a validation for me of something. And
Yeah.
444 is, I think, more when like loved ones of mine or guides are nearby.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think the other sign is the different birds. So uh earlier this fall, maybe it was. I can't remember if I told you the story or not, but I was again testing the universe because I was like, okay, that's not a sign, that's not a sign, that's not a
Yeah.
sign. So I was like, send me a bird I haven't seen before. And I pull up into my driveway and sitting in the bush is a blackbird with a yellow top to its head. And I had never seen that around
Yeah.
here before.
No, that sounds like it'd be like more tropical than it would be like Midwestern.
Apparently, it's a yellow-headed blackbird, but I had to Google it
What about,
afterward.
like the spiritual significance, like the totem animal? I wonder
I,
what it means.
I didn't look it up. I should go do that as homework.
Yeah, when we got off the call, you should go and see if it had like any significance to what you were going through at that period of your life.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, definitely birds, and then mostly folks from the beyond talk to me through music. So
Yeah.
I haven't given them an opportunity to do that as much lately because I've been listening to a lot of like music without words.
Yeah.
But
Frequency,
what'd you say?
like frequency music.
Yeah, like solfeggio frequencies or even just like pop music without the words, just because words can be so powerful and
Mhm.
impactful at
Yeah.
like a level we don't even recognize.
Well, everything's an energy, including like our thoughts and our words. So it all holds, you have like the lower vibrations and the higher vibrations. And if you're wanting to stay at this level, then you're not going to be necessarily wanting to listen to like Olivia Rodrigo, who, like I love her music, but it's a little bit more like, she's always heartbroken or angry about something. And
Oh.
that, yeah, it can affect you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
think a lot of times my like I program signs into me. I don't do it so much right now, maybe because I feel like I'm just kind of living in like a flow state right now and it feels nice and I'm just going to continue that. But a lot of times I will program a sign. I think I said this before where like I will say I want to see a purple elephant before I go to bed at night. And then I will almost always see that purple elephant before I go to bed that night.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
How pushy have you gotten? Like, have you asked for anything obscure that you like totally wouldn't see?
So one time I said I wanted to see a red bird with a heart, and I was like, I want to see it together. And we, Tanner was little and we were passing this like antique mall place and he wanted to go in. And I was like, okay, let's go. So we went in, we looked around. And then as we were leaving, like adjacent to it was like this kind of junkyard that I guess was also like antiques.
Yeah.
And he wanted to go look at it. So we walked over there and there were all of these cardinal birds like carved out of wood. And in the center of them, they all had hearts.
Wow, that's awesome. I
That's
love
pretty
that.
I had that. I had another one where I was like, I wanted to see a caterpillar with a rainbow. And I was walking through Whole Foods and I was needed to get a card for somebody. And the first card I saw was like this rainbow and there's a little caterpillar under it.
Oh my
So
gosh.
like I feel like I can get pretty specific and like my guides pull through for me. But um I don't know, maybe I'm just really good at trusting it too. Who knows? Well, Janos would be like, that's a coincidence. You
Yep.
created it.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. Um, well, I think for everyone listening or watching, thank you. And Christy and I want to give you some homework. So number one is to look for 555 with the golden butterfly.
Mhm.
And number two is to program a sign like Christy
Yeah,
suggested.
just for
And pick whatever.
you. Maybe let's do that now. Let's like kind of all just get comfortable and close our eyes. And just like bringing our awareness to about the 8 inches above our crown, above the top of our head, allowing it to be this beautiful ball of light. And as you become more and more aware of this ball of light, look and see what's inside of it, be it a color or a symbol, an animal, whatever it is specific for you. The first thing that pops into your mind, that's going to be your sign. And just allow that light, once you have your sign, to be pulled through your crown and just to fill your entire area, your entire brain, your third eye. Just fill it with that symbol or that number or that color. And just having complete trust in your soul that what is meant for you will be. Okay. Did you get yours?
So, yep, I'm gonna test the universe fairly strongly, apparently.
Yeah. Okay, you'll have to let me know afterwards if you see it or when you see it.
I will. I will. Yes, when I see it.
All right. Well, should we go ahead and wrap this up?
Yeah. Well, if you want to work with either of us, I guess we didn't really
Mhm.
say what we do. Should
Oh
we
yeah, I guess it's true. Yeah, we can.
go ahead first?
Okay, well, I am Christy or Christiana. I am a clairvoyant psychic medium. I'm also a Reiki master and I do Reiki sessions, soul sessions, tarot readings, mediumship readings out of my home and also virtually. And you can find me, I guess the best way is Instagram. It's Christiana Rose does readings. So it's Cristianarose and then does readings. And that's my Instagram handle. But that's the best way to connect with me, probably.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I am Kelly, and I am a 5D life and leadership coach. And so, what that means is I'm trying to serve as an authenticity alchemist, and I do coaching to help you live a more authentic life, personally and professionally. I do a little bit of Reiki too, but you should see Christy because I'm not monetizing that right now, but I might in the future if I pick up some tips
Yeah.
from Christy. Um, and the best way to reach me is to find me on my LinkedIn services page, or you can also find me on Instagram, Kelly Pastor Coaching.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Well, this was fun. We'll see you later.